I used to think I had it all. After years of struggle and uncertainty, life with Robert finally felt steady, almost safe. Our son was the center of everything, the proof that love had carried us this far. Each morning, I'd wake up grateful, believing I was living the dream I once only whispered to myself late at night. The little routines, his night shifts, my morning rushes, they were just part of our puzzle, and I trusted that puzzle was complete. That morning started like any other, messy, rushed, but satisfying in its own way. I kissed my son goodbye, grabbed my bag, and hurried toward the car. The sun was already pouring down on the street when it hit me. My office locker key wasn't in my bag. Such a small thing, really, but it made my stomach sink. With a heavy sigh, I turned back toward the house, annoyed at myself for losing precious minutes. All I wanted was to slip in and out quickly. I eased the front door open, every move careful, almost exaggerated. Robert should have been asleep by then, worn out from his shift. I crept through the hallway, barely breathing, determined not to wake him. The house felt too still, though, like the air itself was holding its breath. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, just the quiet of a man resting behind a closed door. But I've learned that life doesn't always announce when it's about to break. I remember the faint creak of the floor under my shoes as I walked further inside. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been, like the house was amplifying my movements. My eyes darted toward the living room, then the kitchen. All empty, all still. I told myself to just grab the key from the counter and leave, but something made me pause, made me listen harder. That silence wasn't ordinary. It was the kind that hides something. I stood there, my bag still hanging from my shoulder, and for a moment, I almost laughed at myself. What was I expecting? A surprise party at 10 in the morning? But then, a sound broke through the air. Robert's voice, low, steady, carrying from down the hall. My heart skipped, because he shouldn't have been awake, not at this hour. I froze, straining to catch the words. Each syllable felt like it was moving through the walls, aimed straight at me. I should have turned away. I should have respected his privacy and walked out with my key. That's what a trusting wife does, right? But my feet refused to move. I found myself inching closer, holding my breath, almost afraid of what I might hear. The world outside kept spinning, cars passing, birds chirping. But inside, my world had narrowed to one sound, his voice. And something deep inside me already knew I wasn't ready for what came next. I edged closer to the bedroom door, careful not to let it creak. My pulse was hammering, though I couldn't explain why. It wasn't like I expected a confession or a secret. Robert was my husband, the man I trusted with everything. Still, my body betrayed me, every muscle tense, as if bracing for impact. I held my breath, straining to catch more of his words. They drifted out in fragments, like puzzle pieces I couldn't quite put together. For a second, I thought I heard him laugh. It was soft, but it sent a strange chill down my spine. That sound didn't belong to the man I knew, not in that moment, not in that silence. I pressed my palm against the wall, grounding myself, as if the house itself could steady me. A part of me whispered that I was invading his space, that I should stop. But curiosity has a way of disguising itself as instinct, and instinct told me to keep listening. The key I had come back for suddenly felt unimportant, almost ridiculous compared to what I was caught in. I could have walked away, convinced myself it was nothing, just Robert venting after a long night. But I didn't. Something held me there, in that hallway, rooted to the spot. And in that pause, in that fragile quiet, my life was about to shift in a way I could never undo. His words sliced through the air before I even had the chance to prepare myself. Back then, I was going to break up with her and live my life. My chest tightened instantly, like someone had pressed down on it with both hands. I stood frozen in the hallway, barely able to breathe. The man I had shared years, a child and a home with, was talking about me as if I were nothing more than a mistake, a burden. The sting was immediate, sharp, almost physical. I clutched my bag tighter, my fingers trembling around the strap. My first thought wasn't even anger. It was disbelief, the desperate need to convince myself I had misheard. But his voice was steady, unshaken, and there was no mistaking the truth behind those words. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I felt tears pressing at the corners of my eyes. Yet I couldn't look away, couldn't walk away. Then came the blow that hollowed me out completely. Doesn't mean I don't have my fun every now and then. The words curled in the air like poison, coating everything I thought I knew. My throat closed, my stomach dropped, and in that moment I swear the ground shifted beneath me. Betrayal isn't just something you feel, it's something that rewrites you in an instant. And right there, I knew my life had just cracked open. My hands moved before my mind could catch up. I pulled my phone from my bag, fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened the recorder and hit the button, the red dot glowing like some fragile lifeline. I didn't even think about it. I just knew I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the ugliness of his words. My heart was splitting, but my instincts were sharper than ever. Every second that passed felt stretched, like time itself was mocking me. His voice filled the hallway, casual, careless, as if he were talking about the weather instead of dismantling our entire life together. I leaned against the wall to keep myself from collapsing, the cool paint pressing into my shoulder. Each word he spoke landed like a stone in my chest, piling up until I could barely breathe. My pulse roared in my ears louder than his voice. I thought about our son upstairs, asleep in his room, safe in his little world of innocence. He had no idea that downstairs, the ground beneath his family was crumbling. That thought burned through me. The idea that Robert's lies didn't just wound me. They threatened everything we had built for our child. My grip on the phone tightened, and I silently swore I wouldn't let those words vanish into thin air. Not this time. Not ever. I held the phone steady, though my hands were trembling so hard I thought it might slip from my grasp. The recording captured everything. Every cruel syllable, every careless laugh, every reminder that the love I believed in was nothing but an illusion. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. But no, it was mine. Mine, and there was no waking up from it. My mind raced through memories, desperately searching for cracks I might have missed. Late nights explained away by exhaustion, texts deleted before I could glance at them, the times he pulled away when I reached for him. Suddenly, it all made sense. The puzzle I thought was whole was really a picture torn in half. And the man I loved had been standing on the other side all along, smiling while he lied. I bit down hard, fighting the sob that clawed its way up my throat. I couldn't let him hear me, not yet. He had no idea I was there, no idea his own words were sealing his fate. As I stood in that hallway, holding my phone like a weapon, I realized something. My marriage wasn't built on love, not anymore. It was built on lies, and I was done being blind to them. I left the house that morning with the recording burning a hole in my pocket. Outside, the world carried on like nothing had happened. Neighbors watering their lawns, cars humming down the street, the sun spilling light over everything. But inside me, it was all shadows. I moved through the motions of my day like a ghost, smiling when expected, answering when spoken to. No one could see the war raging under my skin. At work, papers blurred before my eyes, numbers meant nothing, and even the hum of the office felt distant, like it belonged to another world. I kept hearing his voice in my head, word for word, as if it were etched into my bones. I pressed play on the recording during breaks, not because I needed reminding, but because I needed to feel the fire it lit in me. Each replay was a wound, but also a weapon. I thought of the years I had given him, the late nights when I carried more than my share, the times I patched the holes in our life so he could rest, the way I stood by him when he faltered. I thought of our son, how I shielded him from every storm so he would believe in stability, in love. And yet in Robert's eyes, I was nothing but an anchor that dragged him down. That thought hurt, but it also sharpened me. The grief was raw at first, like a wound torn open without warning. But slowly, something else began to grow inside me. It wasn't rage, not the kind that makes you scream or throw things. No, this was quieter, heavier. A determination that sat in my chest like steel. I knew I couldn't erase his words, couldn't unhear them, but I could decide what they would mean for me. I pictured his face when he spoke so casually, as if my love, my loyalty, my sacrifices were footnotes in his story. He had no idea those words would echo back to him, no clue that the woman he underestimated had just taken back her power. I could almost feel the weight of the recording in my hand, like a secret weapon I wasn't ready to use just yet. Timing would matter. It always does. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wouldn't beg him for answers or waste tears trying to fix what was never whole. I wouldn't raise my voice because anger would only give him a reason to dismiss me. No, I would let his own words speak, louder than anything I could ever say. And when the moment came, it wouldn't be a fight. It would be his undoing. All day, I carried the truth like a secret flame, hidden but alive. Every time I caught myself slipping into sorrow, I reminded myself of that fire. I wasn't powerless, not anymore. For years, I had accepted the cracks in our marriage as if they were my fault, patching them with silence and patience. But now, with just one recording, the balance had shifted. I finally held the weight he thought I'd never carry. On the way home, the city looked different. The streets I drove every day felt sharper, clearer, as though the world itself had woken me up. I replayed the plan in my head, not of revenge through chaos, but of something far more precise. My strength would come from restraint, from letting the truth breathe without me having to scream it. That was the power he could never see coming. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt calm. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had decided what to do with it. My grief had carved out space for something stronger. Resolve. I wasn't going to confront him with tears or with rage. I was going to confront him with the sound of his own betrayal, and deep down, I knew the moment I pressed play, everything in his world would collapse. When I walked into the house that evening, Robert was already there, lounging on the couch like it was any other day. The TV hummed in the background, a beer in his hand, and not a trace of guilt on his face. I studied him for a moment, memorizing the calm, the ease, the lies disguised as normalcy. He looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that used to melt me. But now, all I saw was the mask. I set my bag down slowly, every move deliberate, controlled. "Hey," I said, my voice steady, almost too steady. Inside, my heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. He thought I was just another evening version of myself, tired, casual, predictable. That was his first mistake. I sat across from him, my hands folded neatly like a woman with nothing to hide. He raised an eyebrow, sensing something different, but brushed it off. "You okay?" he asked, as if it were routine. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes never leaving his. "Robert," I said softly, "do you really think of me as nothing more than a burden?" The words hung in the air, heavier than anything I had ever spoken, and in that instant I saw the flicker of confusion cross his face. His brow furrowed, and he let out a short, nervous laugh. "What? Where is this coming from?" he said, shifting in his seat like the cushion had suddenly turned uncomfortable. He tried to play it off, tried to brush my question away like lint on his shirt. But I kept my gaze locked on him, calm and unblinking. For once, the silence worked in my favor. He hated silence. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My hand moved with a steadiness I didn't even know I had. He watched me, his expression turning from confusion to curiosity, then to a flicker of unease. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice a little sharper now. I didn't say a word. I just pressed play. The sound filled the room instantly, his voice unmistakable, dripping with arrogance. Back then, I was going to break up with her. His own words betrayed him, bouncing off the walls, echoing back like a ghost he couldn't escape. His face drained of color, the beer bottle slipping slightly in his grip. He looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me, as if scrambling for a version of reality that could save him. The recording played on, his voice slicing through every lie he'd ever told me. "Doesn't mean I don't have my fun every now and then." The room felt colder with each word, like the walls themselves were recoiling. Robert's mouth opened, but nothing came out, only a strangled sound, a desperate attempt to explain the unexplainable. I sat perfectly still, my phone steady in my hand, my eyes fixed on him like a mirror he couldn't look away from. He stammered, "Marie, wait, that's not—" But the words died under the weight of his own voice echoing between us. The confidence he always carried had crumbled in seconds. I could see the panic rising in his eyes, the realization that the mask he wore so easily had been ripped away. He wasn't in control anymore, and he knew it. For once, the silence between us belonged to me. When the recording ended, I placed the phone gently on the table, the faint click of plastic against wood sounding louder than any scream could have. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding, but my voice calm. He reached for me, his face pale, searching for words that would never be enough. And in that pause, in that heavy silence, I understood something. The man in front of me was already defeated. I looked at him then, really looked. Not at the man I had loved, but at the stranger sitting across from me. His lips moved, his hands gestured, but none of it mattered. I felt a strange calm, as though the storm inside me had already passed. My voice, when it came, was steady and clear. "I'm done, Robert. I won't live another day as an afterthought in your life." The words tasted like freedom. His face twisted, first in shock, then in desperation. "Marie, you don't understand. It was just talk. I didn't mean—" But excuses couldn't rewrite the recording. He tried to reach for me, but I leaned back, folding my arms across my chest. For the first time, I wasn't the one clinging to us. He was. And it was almost poetic, watching him scramble to save what he had so carelessly destroyed. I told him what he never expected to hear, that I had already taken steps. My finances were separate, custody plans drawn up, my future mapped without him at the center. Each revelation hit him harder than the last. The pleading in his eyes grew frantic, his words collapsing into stammered promises. But I didn't flinch. I had already crossed the line in my heart, and there was no going back. He leaned forward, his hands gripping his knees, his voice breaking with urgency. "Marie, please, we can fix this. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. But the thing about lies is that once they've unraveled, there's nothing left to stitch them back together." His promises sounded empty, echoes of a man too late to realize the cost of his betrayal. I watched him crumble, and I felt nothing but clarity. For years, I had been the one bending, adjusting, softening my edges to fit the shape of his needs. But now, sitting there with his deceit laid bare between us, I saw the truth. I was stronger without him. Every sacrifice I made had been real, but it didn't mean my worth was tied to his recognition of it. I didn't need his approval, his excuses, or his guilt. I needed freedom. The sound of the recording still lingered in the room, haunting him, empowering me. I knew he would replay it in his head 1,000 times, wishing he could take it back. But that was his prison, not mine. My prison had been silence, and I'd just unlocked the door. And as I stood to leave, I realized he could no longer touch me. Not with words, not with lies, not with anything at all. I walked to the door with a steadiness that surprised even me. Behind me, Robert's voice cracked, calling my name, begging, pleading, but I didn't turn around. Each step felt lighter, as if I were shedding years of weight with every movement. My hand touched the doorknob, cool and solid beneath my fingers, a symbol of the line I was about to cross. For once, it was me leaving, not him. I paused just long enough to take a breath, not to reconsider, but to mark the moment. The house that had held so many memories, dinners, birthdays, quiet nights, no longer felt like home. It was just walls, sheltering secrets that had already rotted. My heart wasn't breaking anymore. It was opening, stretching wide toward something unknown but undeniably mine. As I stepped outside, I whispered to myself, a promise only I needed to hear. His lies ended today. My life begins again. The door clicked shut behind me, final and resolute. And for the first time in years, I felt the kind of silence that wasn't heavy, but liberating. The silence of freedom, of dignity, of a woman who had finally chosen herself.